1 hour. That was all it took for the staff at the prestigious L'Orangerie Gala to shatter a woman's dignity. They mocked her vintage dress, ignored her pleas for water, and laughed as security dragged her toward the exit like a common criminal. The manager, Claudia, sneered that trash doesn't belong with treasure. But the room fell into a terrified silence the moment the doors burst open. Sebastian King, the city's most ruthless billionaire, didn't walk in looking for business. He walked in looking for the woman crying in the security guard's grip. When he spoke, his voice wasn't a whisper. It was a death sentence for their careers. "Take your hands off my wife." Rain hammered against the cobblestone driveway of the Grand Hotel Tremezzo, a relentless downpour that seemed determined to wash away the glittering facade of the evening's event. Inside, the annual Silver Leaf Charity Ball was already in full swing. It was the kind of event where a single ticket cost more than most people's annual rent, a gathering of the city's elite, old money and ruthless tech moguls. Vivian stepped out of the taxi, not a limousine, but a yellow city cab, and immediately felt the stinging bite of the wind. She huddled into her trench coat, a sensible beige piece that had seen better days, protecting the dress underneath. It wasn't a flashy gown fresh off the runway in Milan. It was a vintage piece, a soft lavender silk that had belonged to her grandmother. To Vivian, it was priceless. To the world of high society, it was outdated. "Keep the change," Vivian murmured to the driver, stepping into a puddle that soaked the hem of her heel. She winced but straightened her spine. Tonight was important. Her husband, Sebastian, had insisted she meet him here. He had flown in early from a merger in Tokyo, and this was to be their first public appearance since their private wedding 3 months ago. Nobody knew her face. Sebastian had kept her shielded from the press, citing safety concerns and a desire for a peaceful honeymoon. Tonight, however, the shield was supposed to come down. Vivian walked toward the massive gilded doors, shaking the rain from her umbrella. A valet in a pristine red uniform looked right through her, rushing past to open the door of a sleek black Maybach that had pulled up behind her. "Excuse me," Vivian said softly, trying to hand him her umbrella. The valet didn't even turn his head. He was too busy bowing to the woman stepping out of the Maybach, a socialite named Vanessa, wearing a dress that looked like it was made of diamonds and very little fabric. "Good evening, Miss Vanessa," the valet chirped. "Right this way." Vivian stood there, water dripping from her umbrella onto the red carpet, feeling the first sting of invisibility. She lowered her hand, placed the wet umbrella in a nearby stand herself, and walked toward the entrance. At the check-in podium stood Claudia. Claudia was legendary in the city's hospitality circles, but not for her warmth. She was the gatekeeper of the Grand Hotel, a woman with hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde perfection and eyes that could scan a bank account balance from across the room. She was currently laughing at something a wealthy senator was whispering. As Vivian approached, Claudia's laughter cut off abruptly. Her gaze raked over Vivian, starting at the slightly frizzy hair from the humidity, down to the vintage lavender dress, and ending at the sensible, non-designer heels. "Deliveries are at the service entrance around the back," Claudia said, her voice flat and dismissive. She didn't even look up from her iPad. Vivian blinked, stunned. "I beg your pardon?" "The service entrance," Claudia repeated louder this time, as if speaking to someone slow. "Florists, caterers, and coat-check girls go around the back. Guests enter here." "I am a guest," Vivian said, her voice trembling slightly but holding firm. "My name is Vivian. I'm here to meet someone." Claudia finally looked up, a smirk playing on her lips. She looked Vivian up and down again, letting out a short, incredulous huff of air. "Honey, look around. Does it look like you're on the list? This is a $5,000 a plate dinner, not a soup kitchen." Heat rushed to Vivian's cheeks. Behind her, a few people in line chuckled. She felt small, but she remembered Sebastian's words. "You are the most valuable person in any room you walk into, Viv. Never forget that." "My name is Vivian King," she said clearly. "Please check the list." Claudia rolled her eyes so hard it looked painful. She tapped a manicured fingernail against the screen of her tablet without actually looking at it. "King, there is a Sebastian King on the list. The billionaire. I assume you're going to tell me you're his, what, assistant, personal shopper?" "I'm his wife," Vivian stated. The silence that followed lasted only a second before Claudia burst into laughter. It wasn't polite laughter, it was a cackle. The security guard standing nearby, a burly man named Preston, smirked. "His wife," Claudia repeated, wiping a tear from her eye. "That's a new one. Listen, sweetie, Sebastian King is the most eligible bachelor in the hemisphere. If he got married, it would be on the front page of the Times, not announced by a drowned rat in a thrift store dress at my door." "It was a private ceremony," Vivian insisted, reaching for her clutch to find her ID. "If you just let me show you—" "I don't need to see your library card," Claudia snapped, her amusement vanishing. She signaled to Preston. "We're busy. Real guests are waiting. Step aside or I'll have you removed for trespassing." Vivian froze. She could call Sebastian, but his phone was likely off during his flight or landing procedures. She didn't want to cause a scene that would embarrass him before he even arrived. "I will wait inside," Vivian negotiated, trying to maintain her dignity. "In the lobby until he arrives." Claudia sighed, looking at the line of wealthy patrons building up behind Vivian. "Fine. Stand in the corner of the lobby. Do not enter the ballroom. Do not touch the champagne. And for God's sake, try not to drip on the marble." Vivian kept her head high as she walked past the velvet rope, but inside she was crumbling. She could feel the eyes of the staff boring into her back. They didn't see a human being, they seen a nuisance. The lobby of the Grand Hotel was a masterpiece of architecture. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting a warm golden glow over the polished marble floors. Waiters in white gloves moved like silent dancers, carrying silver trays laden with flutes of Dom Pérignon and hors d'oeuvres topped with caviar. Vivian stood near a large potted fern, trying to make herself as small as possible. She was shivering. The dampness of her coat had seeped through to her skin. 20 minutes passed. Her throat felt like sandpaper. She needed water. She spotted a passing waiter, a young man named Todd, carrying a tray of water glasses. Vivian took a step forward, raising her hand slightly. "Excuse me," she said politely. "May I have a glass of water?" Todd slowed down, his eyes landing on her. He saw the wet hem of her dress and the lack of jewelry. His eyes flicked toward Claudia, who was watching from the ballroom entrance like a hawk. Claudia gave a subtle, almost imperceptible shake of her head. Todd's expression hardened. He looked right through Vivian, accelerating his pace. "Reserved for guests, ma'am." He walked past her and offered the tray to a group of women standing 5 feet away. One of them took a glass, took a single sip, and placed it on a nearby table, abandoning it. Vivian felt a lump form in her throat. It wasn't the thirst, it was the dehumanization. She wasn't asking for champagne or caviar. She was asking for tap water. She checked her phone. No new messages. Sebastian's flight must have been delayed. She was alone in a tank of sharks. Deciding to find a restroom to dry off her coat, Vivian began to walk across the lobby. She kept her head down, avoiding eye contact, but trouble found her anyway. Vanessa, the socialite from the Maybach, was holding court near the center of the room. She was surrounded by a sycophantic group of friends, all laughing too loudly. Vanessa had been pursuing Sebastian King for years. It was an open secret in the city's gossip columns. She believed she was the future Mrs. King, destined to merge her family's oil money with his tech empire. As Vivian walked by, Vanessa spun around, her massive ball-gown skirt flaring out. Vivian tried to sidestep, but there wasn't enough room. Splash! A glass of red wine, held loosely in Vanessa's hand, tipped over. The dark crimson liquid splashed across the front of Vivian's pale lavender dress. It looked like a gunshot wound spreading across the vintage silk. The music seemed to stop. The chatter in the immediate vicinity died instantly. Vivian gasped, looking down at the ruin of her grandmother's dress. Oh no. Vanessa didn't apologize. She didn't offer a napkin. She looked at her empty glass, then at Vivian, and let out a dramatic sigh of annoyance. "You clumsy little thing," Vanessa scolded, her voice dripping with condescension. "You bumped right into me. Do you have any idea how much this vintage Pinot Noir costs? It's wasted now." I didn't bump you," Vivian stammered, her hands hovering over the stain, afraid to touch it and make it worse. "You turned around and—" Don't lie on top of being clumsy, Vanessa snapped. She looked around at her friends for support. Did you see that? She practically threw herself at me. She came out of nowhere, one of the friends chimed in, wrinkling her nose. Who is she anyway? She looks like she wandered in from the street. Claudia appeared instantly, as if summoned by the scent of distress. She marched over, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble. Is there a problem, Miss Vanessa? Claudia asked, her voice sugary sweet as she addressed the socialite, before turning a glare of pure venom onto Vivian. This person, Vanessa gestured at Vivian with a limp wrist, spilled my drink. And look at her. She's soaking wet and smells like rain. It's ruining the ambience, Claudia. Why is the hotel letting riffraff wander the lobby during the silver leaf? Claudia turned to Vivian. The manager's face was a mask of cold fury. This was the excuse she had been waiting for. I told you to stay in the corner, Claudia hissed, lowering her voice so the wealthy guests wouldn't hear her cruelty, but making sure Vivian felt every word. Now you've assaulted a VIP guest and caused property damage. It was an accident, Vivian pleaded, tears finally pricking the corners of her eyes. And she spilled it on me. Please, I just need a towel. My husband will be here soon, and he can replace the wine. Still with the imaginary husband, Claudia scoffed. You really are pathological. Look at this mess. She pointed to a few drops of wine that had hit the floor. Housekeeping is going to have to buff this marble. That comes out of your pocket, assuming you have anything in there besides lint. I have money, Vivian said, reaching for her purse. We don't want your money, Claudia interrupted. We want you gone. You've had your chance. You've loitered, you've harassed the staff, and now you're bothering the guests. Claudia snapped her fingers. Preston, the burly security guard, stepped out of the shadows. He had been waiting for this. He cracked his knuckles, a subtle intimidation tactic. Preston, Claudia commanded, pointing a manicured finger at the exit. Escort this woman off the premises. If she resists, call the police and have her charged with trespassing and public intoxication. I'm not intoxicated, Vivian cried out. You smell like wine, Preston grunted, grabbing her upper arm. His grip was tight, bruisingly so. That's because she threw it on me. Vivian struggled, trying to pry his fingers off her arm. The movement caused her purse to slip from her shoulder and fall to the floor. The contents spilled out, a lipstick, a few tissues, and her phone. Preston kicked the phone away as he dragged her backward. My phone, Vivian gasped, trying to reach for it. It was her only link to Sebastian. Leave it, Preston growled. Consider it a tip for the cleaning crew. The guests watched with a mixture of amusement and indifference. To them, this was just theatre, a beggar being thrown out of the palace. Vanessa took a fresh glass of champagne from a passing tray and toasted to Vivian's retreating figure. Finally, Vanessa laughed, some fresh air. Vivian dug her heels into the marble, fighting against Preston's grip. She wasn't going to leave without her phone, and she wasn't going to be thrown out into the rain like garbage. Let go of me, she shouted, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. You are making a mistake, a massive mistake. The only mistake was letting you in the door, Claudia called out from behind her, crossing her arms. Vivian was dragged toward the revolving doors. The cold air from the outside was already hitting her back. She closed her eyes, praying for a miracle, praying for Sebastian. And then, through the glass of the revolving doors, she saw it. The headlights. A convoy of 3 black SUVs screeched to a halt at the curb, flanking a silver Rolls-Royce Phantom. The lead SUV's door flew open before the car even fully stopped. The valets froze. Claudia froze. Even Preston paused, his grip loosening slightly as he looked out the glass. Everyone knew that car. There was only one man in the city who drove a custom silver Phantom with the license plate K1NG. Sebastian had arrived. The revolving doors didn't just spin, they seemed to part like the Red Sea. A hush fell over the lobby, starting from the entrance and rippling backward like a wave. The string quartet, sensing the shift in the room's energy, trailed off into an awkward silence. Even the clinking of champagne glasses ceased. Sebastian King stepped through the doors. He was a man who consumed the oxygen in any room he entered. Tall, with broad shoulders, clad in a bespoke charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than the security guard's annual salary, he radiated a terrifying kind of calm. His dark hair was swept back, slightly dampened by the rain, and his jaw was set in a line of granite. He didn't look like a guest attending a party. He looked like a general surveying a battlefield. Behind him trailed 2 assistants and 4 personal security detail, moving in perfect synchronization. But Sebastian walked alone at the front, his eyes scanning the crowd with laser-like intensity. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't waving. He was hunting. Claudia, the manager who had just ordered Vivian to be thrown out like garbage, underwent a miraculous transformation. Her sneer vanished, replaced instantly by a dazzling, practiced smile. She smoothed her skirt, patted her hair, and practically sprinted toward the entrance to intercept him. "Mr. King," Claudia gushed, her voice dropping an octave to sound sultry and professional. She extended a hand, ignoring the fact that he hadn't offered his. "Welcome to the Grand Hotel Tremezzo. It is an absolute honor to host you for the Silver Leaf Gala. I'm Claudia, the floor manager. We have your private table reserved near the stage, and the vintage scotch you requested is—" Sebastian walked right past her. He didn't just ignore her, he didn't acknowledge her existence. It was as if she were a ghost. Claudia was left standing with her hand extended to empty air, her smile faltering as the billionaire strode past her with long, purposeful strides. The guests parted hastily, creating a wide corridor for him. They whispered excitedly, "He's here. Look at him." "Who is he looking for?" Vanessa, standing near the center of the room with her wine-stained empty glass, preened. She stood up straighter, fluffing her hair. She was convinced with every fiber of her delusional being that Sebastian was walking toward her. After all, she was the daughter of a senator. They ran in the same circles. She stepped forward, readying her most charming opening line. But Sebastian's gaze wasn't on the diamonds or the silk gowns. His eyes were locked on a dark corner near the revolving doors, where a burly security guard was forcefully twisting the arm of a weeping woman in a wet trench coat. Preston, the guard, had his back to the room. He was too busy enjoying his power trip to notice the silence that had befallen the hotel. He was still shoving Vivian toward the exit. "Move it," Preston growled at her. "Stop struggling, or I'll drag you out by your hair." "Please," Vivian sobbed, her voice breaking. "My husband is—" "Your husband is a fantasy," Preston yelled, raising his hand as if to shove her shoulder again. "Preston!" The name didn't come from Claudia. It came from Sebastian. The voice was like a thunderclap in a cathedral. It wasn't a scream, it was a command projected with such authority that it echoed off the marble walls. Preston froze. His hand hovered in the air. He turned slowly, his face draining of color, as he saw Sebastian King standing 10 feet away. The billionaire's eyes were dark voids of fury. His hands were balled into fists at his sides, the knuckles white. The entire lobby watched, breathless. "Mr. King," Preston stammered, his grip on Vivian's arm loosening slightly, but not letting go. I didn't see you come in, sir. I'm just handling a disturbance. We had a trespasser trying to—" Sebastian moved. He closed the distance between them in 2 seconds flat. He didn't run, but his speed was predatory. He stopped inches from Preston's face. Sebastian was taller, broader, and infinitely more dangerous. "Take your hands off her," Sebastian said. His voice was dangerously low now, a whisper that carried more threat than a shout. "Right, now." Preston blinked, confused. He looked at the disheveled woman in his grip, wet hair, ruined dress, crying, and then back at the billionaire. He couldn't make the connection. "Sir, this woman is crazy," Preston tried to explain, looking for an ally in the powerful man. "She's been harassing guests. She smells like alcohol. Manager Claudia ordered me to remove the trash so your evening wouldn't be disturbed." At the word trash, a muscle in Sebastian's jaw ticked violently. "I'm not going to repeat myself," Sebastian said, and this time the icy menace in his tone made the security guard's knees shake. Preston released Vivian abruptly, as if she were on fire. Vivian stumbled forward, off balance from the sudden release. She didn't hit the floor. Before she could stumble more than a step, Sebastian caught her. The moment his hands touched her, his demeanor shifted entirely. The monster vanished, replaced by a desperate, tender protector. He wrapped one arm securely around her waist and used the other hand to cup her face, lifting her gaze to his. "Viv," he breathed, his voice cracking with emotion. He ignored the hundreds of people watching. He ignored the staff. "Vivian, look at me. Are you hurt?" Vivian looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen, mascara running down her cheeks. She was shaking uncontrollably from the cold and the adrenaline. She clutched the lapels of his expensive suit, burying her face in his chest. "They wouldn't let me in," she wept, her voice muffled against his jacket. "They took my phone. They dragged me. Everyone laughed." Sebastian tightened his hold on her, pulling her so close that her wet trench coat soaked into his immaculate suit. He didn't care. He stroked the back of her head, his eyes closing for a brief second as he exhaled a breath of pure, terrified rage. He had arrived just in time to see a man hurting the only person in the world he actually loved. When Sebastian opened his eyes again and looked up, the tenderness was gone. He looked at Preston. He looked at Claudia, who was now trembling near a pillar. He looked at the crowd. The beast was back. And he wanted blood. Sebastian gently guided Vivian to stand upright, keeping a protective arm firmly around her shoulders. He took off his suit jacket, the charcoal Tom Ford, and draped it over her shoulders, covering her wet coat and the stained dress. The crowd gasped. That jacket alone was worth more than the car Preston drove. Vanessa, the socialite, couldn't read the room. She had spent her life being the center of attention, and she refused to believe what she was seeing. In her mind, Sebastian was simply being a gentleman, a charitable billionaire showing pity to a beggar to make himself look good for the press. She decided this was her moment to shine. Vanessa stepped forward, her heels clicking on the marble. She plastered a sympathetic fake smile on her face. "Oh, Sebastian," Vanessa cooed, walking right up to the couple. "You really are a saint. Most men wouldn't touch a creature like that with a 10-foot pole. It's so noble of you to help the homeless, but really, security was just doing their job. She was causing a scene, spilling drinks. She's clearly mentally unstable." Vivian flinched at the words, shrinking into Sebastian's side. Sebastian slowly turned his head to look at Vanessa. His expression was one of absolute disgust, like he was looking at something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. "Who are you?" Sebastian asked coldly. Vanessa faltered, her smile twitching. I'm Vanessa. Vanessa Sterling. My father is senator." "I don't care who your father is," Sebastian cut her off. His voice was flat, devoid of politeness. "I asked who you are to speak to my wife that way." The word hung in the air. Wife. It ricocheted off the marble walls. It slammed into Claudia's chest like a physical blow. It made Preston, the security guard, grab the wall for support. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like a fish gasping for air. Excuse me? I think I misheard. Did you say wife?" Sebastian didn't look at her anymore. He turned his attention to the room at large. He raised his voice, not shouting, but projecting with the authority of a king, addressing his subjects. "Let me be crystal clear, because apparently the intelligence level in this room is significantly lower than I anticipated." He pulled Vivian closer, kissing her temple openly, defiantly. "This is Vivian King. She is not a trespasser. She is not trash. She is the woman wearing my ring. She is the co-owner of King Enterprises, and she is the only reason I am standing in this hotel tonight." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. You could hear the rain hitting the glass outside. Claudia, the manager, felt her career flashing before her eyes. Her knees actually gave out, and she had to lean heavily on the check-in podium. She had just insulted, mocked, and evicted the wife of the most powerful man in the city. She had told Mrs. King to use the service entrance. Sebastian turned his gaze toward Claudia. It was a physical weight. "You," Sebastian said, pointing a finger at her. Claudia swallowed dryly, taking a shaky step forward. "Mr. King, sir, There was a terrible misunderstanding. She didn't have ID. She was dressed so simply. We have strict protocols." "Protocols?" Sebastian repeated, his voice dripping with acid. "Does your protocol involve denying a guest water? Does it involve laughing at them? Does it involve watching your security guard assault a woman?" "I didn't assault her," Preston blurted out, panic rising in his voice. "I was just escorting her out." Sebastian looked at Vivian's arm. He gently lifted her hand, pushing back the oversized sleeve of his jacket that she was wearing. There, on her pale skin, 5 red finger marks were already beginning to darken into bruises. The crowd murmured. The evidence was undeniable. Sebastian stared at the bruises. His face went deathly pale, and then a flush of dark red crept up his neck. He looked at Preston. "You put your hands on her," Sebastian whispered. "You bruised her." "She was resisting," Preston cried. "She is 110 pounds, Sebastian roared, his composure finally cracking. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "And you are a 200-pound man. You dragged her like an animal." He turned back to Claudia. "And you? You watched. I saw you through the glass. You stood there and smirked." "Mr. King, please," Claudia begged, tears streaming down her face now, real tears of fear, not the fake sympathy she showed earlier. "I have worked at the Grand for 15 years. I have a family. Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" Vivian spoke up. Everyone looked at her. Vivian stepped slightly away from Sebastian's chest. She was still crying, but her voice was stronger now. She looked at Claudia with a mixture of pity and hurt. "Explain why you told me trash doesn't belong with treasure," Vivian asked softly. "Explain why you told me to go to the service entrance. Was it the dress?" "Because this dress belonged to my grandmother, who taught me more about dignity in one day than you have learned in a lifetime." "I didn't know who you were," Claudia wailed. "That is the problem," Sebastian said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. "You didn't know who she was. So you treated her like dirt. If you knew she was my wife, you would have kissed the ground she walked on. You don't treat people with respect because they are human beings. You treat them with respect only if you think they have power. That is not a mistake, Claudia. That is a character flaw, and I do not employ people with flawed characters." "Employ," Vanessa piped up, trying to regain some footing. "Sebastian, darling, you don't own the hotel. You can't fire them." Sebastian slowly turned his head to his lead assistant, a sharp woman named Elena who was standing silently with an iPad. "Elena," Sebastian said, "who owns the Grand Hotel Tremezzo?" Elena tapped her screen once. "The property is owned by the Vantage Group, sir, which is a subsidiary of Orion Holdings." "And who owns the majority share of Orion Holdings as of this morning's merger?" Sebastian asked, never taking his eyes off Claudia. Eleanor didn't even look down. "You do, sir. King Enterprises acquired 51% of the stock at 9 a.m. Tokyo time." The gasp from the crowd was audible this time. It was a twist nobody saw coming. Sebastian didn't just have money. He effectively owned the building they were standing in. Sebastian looked at Claudia. "So technically, I am your boss's boss, which means I can do a lot more than just fire you." He turned to the head of his security detail. "Lock the doors. Nobody leaves." Panic rippled through the room. "Why are we locking the doors?" Vanessa asked, her voice shrill. "I have a gala to attend." "The gala is cancelled," Sebastian announced, his voice ringing out. "Or at least my participation in it is. And since I am the primary donor, I imagine the party is over." He looked down at Vivian, brushing a wet strand of hair from her forehead. "We are going to stay right here until I find out exactly who else in this room decided to treat my wife like a punching bag. I want names. I want footage. And I want to know who spilled wine on her." Vanessa went pale. She tried to hide her empty glass behind her back, but it was too late. Vivian's eyes met hers. "It wasn't an accident, Sebastian," Vivian said quietly, pointing at Vanessa. "She threw it on me." And then she laughed. Sebastian turned his body fully toward Vanessa. The predator had found a new target. Vanessa Montgomery stood frozen, her hand still hiding the empty wine glass behind the folds of her expensive crimson gown. The air in the lobby had grown thick, suffocating. Every eye, from the terrified staff to the fascinated guests, was fixed on her. Sebastian took a step toward her. He moved with the slow, deliberate grace of a predator that knows its prey has nowhere to run. "You threw wine on my wife," Sebastian stated, not as a question, but as a fact. "And then you mocked her for it." It was a misunderstanding," Vanessa stammered, her voice pitching high and thin. She looked around at her friends, the sycophants who usually laughed at her cruel jokes, but they had all taken steps back, distancing themselves from the blast zone. She walked into me. I told you, ask anyone. I don't need to ask anyone, Sebastian said calmly. He held out his hand to Eleanor, his assistant. Without a word, Eleanor placed a sleek black tablet into his palm. Sebastian tapped the screen once, then turned it around so Vanessa, and everyone standing near her, could see. This hotel, Sebastian began, his voice echoing in the silent lobby, was recently upgraded with 4K security cameras in every corner, including the one directly above your head. On the screen, the footage played in crystal clear definition. It showed Vivian walking by, head down, trying to be invisible. It showed Vanessa spotting her. It showed the deliberate turn, the flick of the wrist, and the splash of red wine covering Vivian. It showed Vanessa laughing. It showed her pointing. The video didn't lie. It stripped away Vanessa's defense, leaving her naked in her cruelty. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Even the wealthy elites, who were accustomed to bad behavior, were shocked by the malice on display. That looks very deliberate to me, Sebastian said, handing the tablet back to Elena. Assault, destruction of property, public harassment. Vanessa's face flushed a deep, ugly red. Oh, please, Sebastian, it's just a dress. It looks like a rag anyway. I'll write her a check. How much does she want? 500? 1,000? I'll give her double just to stop this ridiculous scene. She opened her diamond-encrusted clutch, reaching for a checkbook, trying to buy her way out of morality. Sebastian laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound that chilled the room. You think this is about money? He asked quietly. You think you can put a price on my wife's dignity? He took a step closer, invading her personal space. My wife, Sebastian continued, his voice hardening into steel, is wearing a dress that belonged to her late grandmother. It is a family heirloom. It is irreplaceable. There is no check you can write, Vanessa, that covers the history you just desecrated. Vanessa's hand froze inside her purse. I didn't know. You didn't care, he corrected her, and now I don't care about you. Sebastian turned to Eleanor. Get Senator Montgomery on the line. Vanessa's eyes widened in horror. My father? Why are you calling my father? Because, Sebastian said, watching Elena dial, your father's re-election campaign is currently funded heavily by 3 Pakis that I control. I think it's time he learns that his biggest donor is pulling out. Effective immediately. No, Vanessa shrieked, dropping her clutch. You can't do that. It will ruin him. The election is in 2 weeks. Then maybe he should have raised a daughter who treats people with respect, Sebastian said coldly. Eleanor handed him the phone. Senator on line 1, sir. Sebastian took the phone, putting it on speaker so Vanessa could hear. Sebastian, the senator's booming voice came through. To what do I owe the pleasure? I assume you're at the gala. I am, Sebastian said, his eyes locked on Vanessa's terrified face. And I'm standing here with your daughter, Vanessa. She just assaulted my wife. Silence on the other end. Then a confused sputter. Your wife? I didn't know you were married. Surely Vanessa didn't know. She knows now, Sebastian interrupted. She threw wine on her. She mocked her poverty. She acted like a bully. I'm pulling the funding, John, all of it. The TV ads, the billboards, the endorsements. It's gone. Tonight. Sebastian, wait. The senator's voice cracked. Please, she can be difficult, I know, but don't punish the campaign for her stupidity. Put her on the phone. Sebastian handed the phone to Vanessa. She took it with trembling hands. Daddy, she whispered. You idiot. The senator's scream was audible even without speakerphone. Do you have any idea what you've just done? You've cost us everything. Apologize, get on your knees and beg him. Vanessa burst into tears, dropping the phone as she sobbed into her hands. Her social standing, her family's power, her reputation, shattered in under 3 minutes. Sebastian didn't even watch her cry. He had already turned away. He was done with her. He turned his attention back to the staff, to Claudia and Preston. Claudia was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. She had watched the daughter of a senator get destroyed. She knew she was next. Mr. King, Claudia whispered, her voice barely audible. I resign. I'll leave right now. Just, please don't blackball me. Resign, Sebastian raised an eyebrow. You don't get to resign, Claudia. You're fired. For cause, gross negligence, discrimination, and facilitating an assault on a guest. He looked at the security team that had arrived with him. Escort her out, Sebastian commanded. And Claudia? She looked up, eyes filled with hope for mercy. Use the service entrance, Sebastian said. The irony hit her like a physical blow, the color drained from her face. But, it's raining, she whispered. I know, Sebastian said, wrapping his arm tighter around Vivian. It's cold, isn't it? Just like it was for my wife when you left her standing there. Two of Sebastian's guards stepped forward. Claudia looked around for help, for sympathy, but the staff she had terrorized for years looked down at their shoes, hiding smiles. Nobody moved to help her. As the guards took Claudia by the elbows to lead her away, Sebastian turned his eyes to Preston. The large security guard was backing away, looking for an exit. And where do you think you're going? Sebastian asked softly. I was just following orders, Preston yelled, panic taking over. Claudia told me to remove her. I didn't know. You enjoyed it, Vivian spoke up. Sebastian looked down at her. Vivian was still pale, but her eyes were dry now. She pointed at Preston. You kicked my phone, she said, her voice steady. Claudia told you to remove me, but she didn't tell you to kick my belongings. She didn't tell you to squeeze my arm until it bruised. You did that because you wanted to hurt me. Sebastian's face went dark. That settles it. Sirens began to wail outside, growing louder. Blue and red lights flashed against the rain-streaked glass of the revolving doors. I took the liberty of calling the police while I was walking in, Sebastian said. Assault is a crime, Preston, and I have the medical report of my wife's bruising, the video evidence, and about 200 witnesses. Preston's knees buckled. He slumped against the wall, defeated. The lobby was silent again, save for the sound of Vanessa sobbing in the background. The justice had been swift, brutal, and absolute. Sebastian looked at the crowd of guests one last time. Enjoy your evening, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I hope the champagne tastes worth it. He turned to Vivian, his expression softening instantly. Let's go home, Mrs. King. The walk out of the Grand Hotel Tremezzo was very different from Vivian's arrival. When she had arrived, she was invisible, an obstacle to be removed. Now, as she walked arm in arm with Sebastian, the world seemed to bend around them. The guests parted like water, their faces a mixture of awe, fear, and shame. The valets who had ignored her earlier were now scrambling. They opened the double doors wide, bowing low. One of them ran ahead with a massive umbrella, shielding Vivian from the rain as if she were royalty. Outside, the air was crisp and cold, but Vivian didn't feel it. She was wrapped in Sebastian's suit jacket, which smelled of sandalwood and safety. The silver Rolls-Royce Phantom was waiting at the curb, engine purring. The chauffeur, a kind older man named Arthur, held the rear door open. Good evening, Mrs. King, Arthur said with a warm smile, ignoring her ruined dress and disheveled hair. It's good to see you again. Thank you, Arthur, Vivian whispered, sliding into the plush leather interior. Sebastian slid in beside her. The heavy door closed with a solid thump, sealing out the noise of the sirens, the rain, and the flashing cameras of the paparazzi who had just arrived, sniffing out a scandal. Inside the car, it was quiet. The ceiling of the Rolls-Royce was filled with tiny fiber-optic lights, mimicking a starry night sky. As the car pulled away, leaving the chaos of the hotel behind, the adrenaline that had been holding Vivian together finally evaporated. She slumped back against the leather seat, a fresh wave of tears spilling over. Sebastian moved instantly. He pulled down the center armrest and reached for a bottle of water from the small refrigerator, cracking the seal. Here, he said softly, handing it to her. Drink. You must be dehydrated. Vivian took the bottle, her hands shaking. She took a long sip, the cool water soothing her parched throat. It tasted like heaven compared to the desperate thirst she had felt in the lobby. I'm sorry, she choked out, wiping her eyes. Sebastian froze. He looked at her, confused and pained. You're sorry? Viv, why on earth would you be sorry? I ruined your night, she said, looking down at the wine stain on her lap. You flew all the way from Tokyo for this merger celebration. You needed to be seen there. And instead, you had to come rescue me like I'm some helpless child. I embarrassed you." Sebastian let out a long breath. He reached out and gently took the water bottle from her hand, placing it in the holder. Then he took both of her hands in his. "Look at me," he commanded gently. She met his gaze. His eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, were wide with sincerity. "You didn't ruin my night," Sebastian said firmly. "You saved me from spending 3 hours making small talk with vultures who only want my money. And as for embarrassing me, Vivian, walking out of there with you was the proudest moment of my life. But look at me," she gestured to herself. "The dress, the hair, I look like a mess." "You look like a survivor," he said. He reached out and touched the fabric of the lavender dress right over the wine stain. "Tell me about the dress. You said it was your grandmother's." Vivian nodded, a sad smile touching her lips. "Yes. Grandma Rose. She wore this to her engagement party in 1955. She didn't have much money, so she sewed the lace trim herself. She gave it to me before she passed away. She told me it was her lucky charm dress. She said wearing it meant true love would find you." She laughed bitterly. "I guess the luck ran out tonight. Vanessa ruined it. It's stained forever." Sebastian looked at the dress, then at Vivian. He brought her knuckles to his lips and kissed them. "The luck didn't run out," he whispered. "I found you, didn't I? And as for the stain, we will fix it. I know the best restoration experts in Europe. They restore tapestries from the 16th century. They can handle a little Pinot Noir." Vivian let out a small, wet laugh. "You really think so?" "I know so. And if they can't—" He paused, his expression serious. "Then we will frame it. We will hang it in the hallway of the main house, stains and all." "Why would you frame a ruined dress?" she asked. "To remind us," Sebastian said, "to remind us that people tried to tear us down, and they failed. This stain isn't a mistake, Viv. It's a battle scar, and you won the war." Vivian leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time all night, she felt the knot of anxiety in her chest loosen. "What will happen to them?" she asked quietly. "Claudia? Preston? Vanessa?" Sebastian's jaw tightened slightly, though his voice remained gentle. "Preston is going to jail," he said simply. "My legal team is already at the police station. They will ensure he is charged with assault and battery. He won't work in security ever again." "And Claudia?" "Claudia is finished in this city," Sebastian said. "I made a few calls before I entered the lobby. She is blacklisted from every major hotel chain. She will be lucky to find a job managing a motel on the highway." "And Vanessa?" Sebastian sighed. "Vanessa is the worst of them all because she didn't need to be cruel. She chose to be. Her father, the senator, is going to lose his election. Without my funding, his campaign is dead in the water. Vanessa will go from being the princess of the city to a social pariah. Nobody will invite her to galas anymore because nobody wants to be associated with the woman who assaulted Sebastian King's wife." He kissed the top of her head. "It's hard karma, Viv. They sowed the wind, now they are reaping the whirlwind." Vivian stayed silent for a moment, watching the city lights blur past the rain-streaked window. She didn't feel happy about their suffering, but she felt a sense of closure. Justice had been served. "I was so scared," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "When they were dragging me, I thought nobody would ever believe me. I felt so small." Sebastian turned, pulling her into his lap. He wrapped his arms around her completely, shielding her from the world. "You are not small," he murmured into her hair. "You are the biggest thing in my life. And I promise you, as long as I have breath in my lungs, nobody will ever make you feel that way again. Next time we go out, we go together, hand in hand. And if they don't like it, I'll buy the building and turn off the lights." Vivian smiled, burying her face in his neck. "I love you, Sebastian." "I love you more, Vivian." The car slowed down as it approached the massive iron gates of their estate. The nightmare at the hotel was over. They were home, but the story wasn't quite finished, because the next morning the world would wake up to the news. And the video of Sebastian King defending his wife was about to go viral. The storm had passed. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the master bedroom in the King estate, casting long beams of gold across the duvet. Vivian stirred, blinking her eyes open. For a moment she disoriented, her heart racing as a phantom sensation of a cold, wet coat clung to her memory. But then she felt the warmth of the high thread count sheets and heard the distant, comforting clatter of cookware from the kitchen downstairs. She sat up, stretching. The bruise on her arm was still there, a dark purple splotch against her pale skin, but it didn't hurt as much as it had the night before. It was healing. Vivian threw on a silk robe, dry, clean, and smelling of lavender, and walked downstairs. She found Sebastian in the kitchen. The man who could buy entire countries was currently standing barefoot in front of the stove, flipping pancakes. He looked remarkably domestic, a stark contrast to the terrifying force of nature he had been in the hotel lobby. "Good morning," Sebastian said without turning around, sensing her presence. "How did you know I was there?" Vivian asked, walking over to wrap her arms around his waist from behind. "I always know where you are," he replied, turning to kiss her forehead. "Coffee is ready, and I have something to show you." Vivian stiffened slightly. "Is it bad?" "On the contrary," Sebastian grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "It's justice." He handed her a mug of coffee and led her to the kitchen island, where a tablet was propped up. The screen was displaying the front page of the City Chronicle's website. The headline was bold and impossible to miss. "King's Wrath, Billionaire Exposes Hotel Horror Show." Below it was a still image taken from a guest's phone video. It showed Sebastian standing protectively over Vivian, pointing a finger at a terrified Claudia. "Read the article," Sebastian urged gently. Vivian scrolled. Last night, the glamorous Silver Leaf charity ball descended into chaos. Not by the hands of intruders, but due to the elitist behavior of the venue's own staff. Sources confirmed that Vivian King, wife of tech mogul Sebastian King, was denied entry, mocked, and physically removed by security for wearing a vintage dress. The incident has sparked a citywide conversation about classism and hospitality standards, but the fallout for the instigators has been swift. Vivian looked up at Sebastian. "Swift?" "Keep reading," he pointed to the second paragraph. "Senator John Montgomery announced early this morning that he is withdrawing from the upcoming election, citing personal family matters. This comes hours after leaked footage showed his daughter, socialite Vanessa Montgomery, assaulting Mrs. King with a glass of wine. The hashtag #MeanGirlVanessa is currently trending #1 on social media, with thousands of users calling for a boycott of the Montgomery family's businesses." Vivian covered her mouth. He withdrew. That was his life's dream. He didn't have a choice. Sebastian shrugged, pouring syrup on a pancake. The video of Vanessa was viewed 4 million times overnight. If he stayed in the race, he would have been humiliated at the polls. He cut his losses to save what little reputation he has left. And Vanessa. "Vanessa has deleted her Instagram," Sebastian said with a satisfied nod. "She's on a plane to a wellness retreat in Switzerland. I doubt we'll see her in the social circles for a very long time." Vivian scrolled further down. There was a smaller sidebar article titled "Hotel Shakeup." The Grand Hotel Tremezzo has issued a public apology to the King family. In a statement released at 4:00 a.m., the hotel board confirmed the immediate termination of floor manager Claudia R. and head of security Preston K. Both are currently under investigation by local authorities for assault and discrimination. The hotel has also pledged a $2 million donation to a charity of Mrs. King's choosing as a gesture of goodwill. Vivian set the tablet down. She felt a weight lift off her shoulders that she hadn't realized she was carrying. It wasn't just revenge, it was vindication. The world knew the truth. She wasn't the crazy woman in the wet coat. She was the victim of cruelty, and the world was on her side. $2 million, Vivian asked. "I suggested 5, Sebastian said, sitting on a bar stool next to her, but settled for 2. It's your money to give away, Viv. Pick a charity that matters to you." Vivian thought for a moment. She looked at the sunlight hitting the garden outside. "I want to donate it to the Safe Haven Shelter," she said softly. "They help women who have nothing. Women who are invisible to society. I want to make sure no one else feels the way I felt standing in that rain." Sebastian smiled, taking her hand. "Done. I'll have Elena wire the funds within the hour." They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, the trauma of the previous night fading into a bad memory. But as they finished, Sebastian grew serious again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Vivian gasped. "Sebastian, we're already married." "I know," he said, opening the box. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a brooch, an intricate, diamond-encrusted brooch shaped like a lavender flower. "I spoke to the restoration expert," Sebastian explained. "The dress can be cleaned, but there might be a faint mark left where the wine hit deepest. He suggested we cover it. So I had this commissioned this morning from the jeweler downtown. He rushed it over." He took the brooch out, the diamonds sparkling in the morning light. "It matches the dress," Vivian whispered, tears welling up again. "It's armor," Sebastian corrected her. "Pin this over the stain. It turns a scar into a jewel. Next time we go out, and we will go out, you wear the dress. You wear this brooch, and you walk in with your head high." Vivian took the brooch, her fingers trembling. She looked at this man, this powerful, ruthless, incredible man who would burn down the world just to keep her warm. "You really are dramatic, you know that?" She laughed, wiping a tear. "I'm in love," Sebastian countered, leaning in to kiss her. "There's a difference." He stood up, pulling her into a hug. "Now," he whispered into her ear. "Go get dressed. The board of directors is coming over for lunch at noon. I want to introduce them to the real owner of this house." "Me?" "You," Sebastian said firmly. "My wife, the woman who brought the Grand Hotel to its knees without throwing a single punch." Vivian smiled, clutching the diamond lavender brooch in her hand. The rain was gone. The cold was gone. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, she was loved, and she was ready. As she walked back upstairs to prepare for her new life, she caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. She didn't see the frightened girl from the night before. She saw Mrs. Vivian King, and she knew with absolute certainty that no locked door would ever stop her again. What a roller coaster of emotions. In the end, karma didn't just knock on the door, it kicked it down. Vivian went from being ignored and abused to being the most powerful woman in the city, all because she stayed true to herself, and Sebastian proved that real love is about protection and respect. It's a harsh lesson for people like Claudia and Vanessa. Be careful who you step on today, because they might be the ones signing your paycheck tomorrow. What would you have done if you were in Vivian's shoes? Would you have accepted Vanessa's money, or was public justice the only way to go? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice, romance, and hard-hitting karma, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss out on the next dramatic story. Thanks for watching.